Today, we're getting into the mind of James Baldwin, but not just as a writer. We're looking at him as an architect of moral clarity. We're going to break down what I call the Baldwin Blueprint, his incredible system for turning truth into actual power. It's a story about how one man built a method to defeat a world that was literally designed to shut him down, and why that framework is, well, more important right now than ever.
This right here, this is the engine for his entire life's work. And you gotta understand, this wasn't just some clever line for Baldwin, this was a strategic choice. Think about it. To be a victim means you're defined by what other people do to you. It's passive. Someone else is writing your story. But to be a witness? That's taking the pen back. A witness observes, analyzes, and most importantly testifies. It's an active, powerful position to be in. For Baldwin, this meant his pen wasn't just for writing. It was a scalpel, ready to perform an autopsy on the lies America was telling itself.
So where do we see this idea in its absolute peak form? Well, let's go back to 1965. Picture this, one of the most prestigious stages in the world, the Cambridge Union. The topic of the debate was, the American dream is at the expense of the American Negro. Now on the other side of the stage is William F. Buckley Jr., a giant of conservative thought, armed with all the policy points and statistics you can imagine. But Baldwin? He came armed with something way more powerful. Just radical, brutal honesty. He wasn't there to win a debate. He was there to perform a kind of moral surgery right in front of everyone. He was about to weaponize clarity. In that moment, it just completely redefined what power looks like. Baldwin knew that real authority doesn't come from a fancy degree or a title. It comes from the raw courage to tell the truth, especially your own. Standing there at Cambridge, in front of a pretty skeptical crowd, he showed them that his vulnerability, all the painful, messy experiences of being a black man in America, that wasn't a weakness. Oh no. It was his most lethal weapon. This was the moment his whole approach went public, a blueprint built on the simple, non-negotiable power of honesty.
But to really truly understand the man on that Cambridge stage, we have to go way back. Back to the beginning, back to a boy in Harlem who was fighting for his own soul, surrounded by walls he could see and walls he could only feel. To get his power, you first have to understand his escape.
Now this isn't just a timeline of events, it's a map of a prison break. First, at just 14, he becomes a boy preacher. He masters the language of power in the church, but he feels trapped, like an outsider in his own skin. The pulpit was his first stage, but he knew its safety was its own kind of cage. So his next escape is into the library, driven by this incredible intellectual hunger, just desperately searching for the words to describe his own reality. And then comes the final break, 1948. He flees to Paris with $40 in his pocket. He wasn't just escaping a country, he was escaping the very identity America had built to trap.
Okay, so let's put this side by side because this is the core of the fight. On one side, you have the identity America tried to force on him, that he was ugly, that he was doomed, a victim. On the other side, you have the sovereignty he built for himself in the lonely, broke years in Paris. It was there that he systematically unlearned how to be a victim. He flat out refused the label Negro writer because he demanded to be a writer, period. In those cafes, with no safety net, no national myth to lean on, he built his own internal fortress. He was finally free to see America for exactly what it was.
All right, so out of all this pressure, the fire of his youth and the forge of his exile, a really powerful and disciplined mindset starts to take shape. And this wasn't just about feelings, this was about thinking. This was a philosophy built for a fight.
So what does being the witness actually mean? Well, it's about actively rejecting comfort. Baldwin had this one simple, brutal rule. Every single time you soften the truth to be liked, every time you water it down to be accepted, you lose your firepower. You give away your authority. In his work, he doesn't just describe his rage and his pain, he dissects it. He puts his own bitterness under a microscope. He's a witness even to the ugliest parts of himself. That is facing the fire.
And this philosophy had a partner in crime, a strategy you could call radical humanism. Now this is not about being nice, it's about being incredibly rigorous. Baldwin made himself and his readers stay inside the messiness of a problem until you could see the humanity, the fear, and the pain on both sides of the line. He would write about white Americans clinging to racist ideas, not just to yell at them, but to diagnose them. He explained that their need for a racial hierarchy was really about their own terror. He treated the page like a lab for a national anatomy lesson, mastering the logic of the lies so well that the country had no choice but to see itself in his words.
It's a great question, right? Because a philosophy, it's just an idea. It's abstract. How do you make it real? Baldwin knew that for any of this to matter, it had to be grounded in a daily, repeatable, disciplined practice. It had to become a set of habits.
So,
Let's get into the nuts and bolts. Let's look at the actual system Baldwin built to keep his mind and his morals sharp. This is where the magic becomes a method. This is the architecture of his genius.
Now, this is not some romantic idea of a writer just waiting for inspiration to strike. This was a high-performance routine. Step 1, the night watch. He wrote after midnight, when the world was quiet, to make sure his own voice was the absolute loudest and clearest one he could hear. Step 2, the exile audit. By living so far away, he could look at America with a clarity that's just impossible when you're inside it, free from its self-serving stories. And step 3, the Socratic Model. He didn't hide from his critics. He actively sought them out, not to yell, but to dismantle their arguments with logic and force them to confront his humanity.
And the foundation for this whole system was a process we can call systematic myth stripping. Just think about that goal. Every sentence must be a threat to innocence. For instance, he completely destroyed the myth that racial progress was just this slow, gentle, comfortable process. No, he made it crystal clear that real change required a painful, revolutionary clash with America's history. There was no easy way out. And this daily habit of seeking the fire, not comfort, that's what created his foundational firepower. And that right there is how his name became the global gold standard for moral clarity.
So now that we have the full toolkit, his philosophy and his daily system, we can see how decades of this intense preparation didn't just make him a great writer, it turned him into the architect of a new moral era for an entire country.
Which brings us back to where we started, 1965, at the Cambridge Union. But we see it differently now, don't we? We see a man who isn't just giving a speech. He's deploying a weapon system that he spent decades building and perfecting. All those lonely midnight hours in Paris, all those intellectual showdowns, all that relentless myth stripping, it all led to this one moment. And the debate? Well, it was the ultimate payoff. After he spoke, the Union voted. And the result? It wasn't even close. 544 to 164. A complete landslide for Baldwin.
And what a legacy that blueprint left. He proved that true courage is a kind of intellectual firepower. He showed that a book of essays, if they're sharp enough, can be more revolutionary than an army. And maybe most importantly, he destroyed the simple idea that raw anger is the only tool for change. He replaced it with something way more dangerous to the powers that be, the unvarnished, non-negotiable, bone-deep truth. He made us see the high price of honesty, and in doing that, his story becomes our story.
So, okay, why does any of this matter to us, right here, right now? Because Baldwin's journey isn't just a history lesson, it's a guide. It's a playbook for anyone who's ever felt defined or limited by a world that refuses to really see them. Whether that's in an office, on a project, or even in your own family.
This is it. This is the core takeaway. The blueprint teaches us that your personal power is directly connected to your willingness to stop hiding behind comfortable lies. Corporate jargon, social niceties, personal excuses, and start witnessing the truth of your own experience. The moment you raise your personal level of honesty, the moment you commit to clarity, you stop being a victim of the lie and you become the master of the fire. You take back control of your own story.
So I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. I want you to find your own personal Cambridge Union. It could be a difficult conversation you need to have, a project you're scared to start, a belief you've never really challenged. What is the one truth you've been avoiding just to feel safe? And what do you think would happen if you finally faced it? Not with anger, but with absolute, unflinching, analytical courage. Let's end right there. Baldwin's entire life proves this idea. Silence is never neutral. It's always an active choice. And your courage, the choice to speak, to witness, to face the fire with clarity, that's the code. That is the blueprint for your own kind of greatness.